Hey, welcome to another episode of God Yay or Nay. I'm here with Raja Burrows. Raja, thanks for joining me, man.
Thanks so much for having me.
I'm excited to have you on the podcast. I think we're into a lot of the same stuff, so I think we're gonna have some good conversation here. I do want you to introduce yourself to my audience, though. You have like a lot of stuff that you've
I got a lot of I got a lot of stuff that I do.
yeah, you so I don't know, give a little bit of just a quick bio of yourself and all
Yeah,
the stuff you dipped your toes in.
totally. I'm Raja Burrows. I am a Los Angeles-based actor. That's like my main thing. But being an actor in 2021 and certainly in a post-COVID 2021, I'm on a number of different platforms. I have a podcast. I'm on TikTok. That's been sort of my main sort of creative thrust right now. I also am a musician. I play the guitar. I sing. Um, I have a lot of different outlets for my creative energy that I just sort of like to follow and see where the flow is.
That's no, that's really nice. And like you were also in like musical theater and stuff like that beforehand,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Out
I
in
did
New
musical
York.
theater in New York for 10 years.
Damn. All right. And like how did you find like transitioning from like one art form to the other? Was it just kind of following your
It,
intuition?
yeah, it was the sort of thing. It's really interesting because I grew up doing a lot of musical theater through circumstance. Um, my dad played in a band, and I sort of grew up around music and singing. And it became really evident really quickly that for whatever reason, I just had a really good sense of pitch and singing and rhythm. And like me singing at age 3 or 4, like I didn't sound like a yelly kid singing. Like I had pitch and intonation, and there was something there. And Albuquerque at the time, it still does to an extent, but certainly in the early 90s, had an unbelievable community theater that did musicals. I'm talking like Neil Patrick Harris is an alumnus, like did shows with these people. Freddie Prinze Jr. did shows with these. Like,
Okay.
yeah, no, it was like a super legit, like very professional, high level community theater. And I was like, we had the resources to help, have me audition for shows and do dance classes and whatever. And that's sort of how I got into performing in general. And then when I was about 15, I realized, oh, I want this to be my job. Like, I want to be some kind of performer professionally for the rest of my life.
Mm.
And I studied opera in college and did musical theater and moved to New York. And I realized pretty quickly, if I'm being honest, that I didn't actually like rehearsing for musicals.
Okay. Yeah, I think that would be something you would need to like, right?
And I mean, I remember I was about 3 years in, and there was my intuition, which I didn't follow at the time, was telling me, like, my man, you don't actually like this. Like
Mm.
this isn't fun for you. I loved auditioning. I loved auditioning. It's my favorite
Okay.
thing in the world because you go in, you prepare your own material. It's like, these are my songs. This is what shows me off the best. This is how I'm feeling. And there's a real like um, industriousness to auditioning. And it felt very much like a job, which, going back to what I said before, I wanted it to be my job.
Okay. And when you say industriousness, do you mean like preparation, like
Yeah.
getting ready and like working hard to like
Yeah.
nail
Well,
that
and
part?
exactly. Well, and there's just a lot of logistics that go into being a, you know, quote unquote, working actor, auditioner person. It's figuring out, okay, well, these are the shows that they're casting at this theater company season. What do I have that, best fits for this season? And I have to be a little bit strategic, and how do I want to show myself off, and what do I want to wear? And also, quite honestly, the logistics of, what, they're doing a show, they're doing Hairspray, and they're going to need a lot of like women in their early 20s, which means it's going to be a busy audition, which means I need to get there at 7 in order to get a sign up slot.
Mm.
Right. So there's a lot of that again, just sort of that math, logistics, practicality component that I loved, that I really, really thrived on. And I loved it. So I love basically the inception of the creative process in, doing a show, which is the first audition.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved it doing the show, not so much the performing, but once the show was like set. So the way that musicals work is you rehearse and you play and you tweak things, and then at some point before you open the show, you you lock in the show. I'm
Okay.
doing air quotes. I know we can't. I don't know if we can see or not. But you lock in the show, and then you can't change anything. And I love that, because then I had that sense of certainty. It was like, oh, I know what my job is. I know that I go here. I don't have to devote any mental energy to wondering if something is going to change. I don't have to be quite so much on the balls of my feet all the time. And I can really like settle into my track. I can really embody what it is that I'm doing and be ready for whatever serendipity happens, because I have that framework. So I love the beginning and I love the end, but the rehearsal process was just a nightmare for me. It felt really chaotic. I didn't ever understand what was going on, or the flow. I couldn't track the flow of energy. And it was just really hard for me mentally for it to feel like something I wanted to keep doing.
Mm.
But I kept doing it for another 4 or 5 years because I was going for the promise of, well, once I make it to the next level in my career, then it'll be better. And then I get to the next level in my career and it wasn't better. And I'd be like, oh, no, I was wrong. It's the next level that's going to be better. And there's a woman her name is Katrina Lenk. She's a Tony-winning Broadway actor. Incredible woman. She was in The Band's Visit and The Revival of Company. She's great. And we did a workshop together. We did a project together. And it was a day at the rehearsal, and we were it was one of those days when just everyone's a little off, right? And it happens in any job. There's nothing you can do about it. It's the ups and downs of life, but everyone's just like a little underfed, a little underslept, we're all just like a little chippy and not as patient as we could be. And we were working on some bit of choreography and just nothing was coming together. And they were changing stuff, and it just felt really, to me, unprofessional. Because I don't mind things falling apart and not knowing what we're doing, but I do mind when we aren't handling that well, when we don't have a clear authority figure that's like, all right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to do this and this and this. We're going to set this. We're going to move on to something else. And then we'll come back to it once we've had a little more, come back to this after lunch, something, right? And I remember I turned to this woman, again, who at this point had already been on Broadway. And I was like, Katrina, I have a question for you. I said, you've done a lot of different kinds of projects. What is the difference that you have found between projects that are sort of not amateurish, but sort of low level, low prestige kinds of projects, and projects that are like Broadway and that you win Tonys for? What's the difference in that process? Just because that's what I want to do, and I just want to get a better understanding of the industry. And she looked at me and she said, the only difference is the money. The process is identical.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think I was 27 at the time. And I was like, no, that can't possibly be. No, but I mean like the process. She's like, I know what you mean. It's the same. Nothing changes except for the dollars in the contract. And I didn't understand what she meant at the time. And then once I did it a few more years and did another, more range of projects, I was like, oh my God, Broadway veteran Katrina Lenk was right about Broadway.
Ha, 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 ha. Yeah, no kidding. And that's a yeah, and so when you found that out, I guess like that's
Yeah,
when you were like, I need to make a change, eh?
yeah, once that really sunk in, and it was I had just booked, so it was sort of in about a 4-month period, I booked a number of things. I booked a fairly prestigious regional gig that had like a fancy Nancy director, whatever person. Then I booked 2 episodes of a TV show called The Path on Hulu. It was a show with Aaron Paul. It was on, fairly fancy. And then I got offered a reading, like a workshop sort of thing up in Poughkeepsie for $100.
Okay.
Right? A musical theater. So it was musical theater, TV and film, musical theater. I did the musical theater 3-week rehearsal process. I've never been more miserable in my life at a non-desk job.
Oh wow.
I was like, this process ain't me. Whatever is required to do this job well, I don't have it, and I have no desire to cultivate it.
Mm.
I just don't want to do the work. Plain and simple. I then do this TV show, and it's the most incredible professional experience of my career. Everybody was super tight, on top of their stuff. The money was way better. But even if the money wasn't better, there was just a level of polish and organization and everybody really being on the same page all the time, technically, that I just thrived in. I was like, oh, we're all at least trying to make the same show here. Whether or not that's whatever, that's the magic of making art, the result. But like here and now, when I'm at work, we are all trying to be on the same page, and everyone matters. Everyone is important. We are all fully in it because there's so much money on the line. You don't have time to like mess around on set. Like you just don't, because then you pay lots of overages and it costs the suits at NBC a lot of money. So you keep it tight. And I got offered this, and then after that, right on the heels of that, like the last day of shooting, I got offered this $100 workshop, and I'd have to leave my day job I have to take a week off of work, which was paying me at that point over $1,000 a week, and I'd have to go up to Poughkeepsie to be like random ensemble member for $100, and I'm like, no, I'm not doing it. Straight up. I will not do this. And it was at that moment I was like, oh, I really don't want to do this work. I just want to do TV and film. And it was really, really freeing in a lot of ways creatively. But it was really, really difficult because I had built so many connections and so much clout in the musical theater world. And I had so many reps of like, I knew how the musical theater industry worked at the time. And so to abandon all of that knowledge, I think was the hardest part. And it really felt like a trade-off of all of this knowledge and these industry fundamentals I have to let go of, because all the knowledge in the world is not resulting in something that makes me feel happy or joyful or nourished or sustained. And because I am ultimately committed to being a performer and a public figure, like that is what I want for the entirety of my life, I refuse to spend even 1 second of it being unhappy with the process. I won't do it. And that is true for everything in my life. I will not be unhappy with the process.
Hey man, I have to, that's a lot, that's very courageous to like take that leap. I understand that when a lot of people get into one industry and they stay in it for so long, and that, like, you know what you're saying, that knowledge that you build up, you're just like, it becomes like your safety net. You're like, hey, this is what I know, I have to stay here. But the one thing I think a lot of people don't understand is that that knowledge, you will be able to translate it to something else eventually. You might not
Yes.
right off the bat,
But
but eventually you'll get into something new, and then all of a sudden you'll be like, oh, all that knowledge I learned from my musical theater career,
yep.
I can jump that into something else.
I'll
And
tell
yeah,
you
it's
what.
great.
I I didn't under I sort of like, again, intellectually, like prefrontal cortex totally knew that. Lizard brain had no idea.
And the lizard brain always is in the fear.
Right? But it's funny, now that I've started doing the TikTok thing, the muscle memory that I built doing musical theater is exactly the muscle memory that I need to do well on TikTok.
Mm.
So, like, for instance, this morning, so some of it is like, okay, when do I have to post? Like, what are the logistics? When do I post is the same as when do I have to get to the audition, right?
Okay.
What do I wear? What do I do this, right? But also, these musical theater auditions, sometimes you're in there for 15 seconds. You have 15 seconds to walk in, sing 8 notes,
Holy shit.
and then hope they give you a call back, which has happened to me before. But it's that first audition is really, really compressed energy.
And that's
And
what
so
TikTok is, I
and
guess,
that's
right?
what TikTok. And so this morning, before I went to the gym, I do a running class on Mondays. I recorded 2 TikToks, and I knew how to get my body and my brain and my voice, like everything just aligned and tight to be able to go, hold it out here, boom, boom, boom. I didn't like that take. Redo, tighten it up. We make some adjustments, boom. And then probably in about 15 minutes, I recorded what I considered to be a high level TikTok.
Nice.
And it didn't take me 2.5 hours to like sit down and let me write a big thing and parse it out and tighten it up and make sure it fits into 14.5 seconds. So the little tag and no, I don't have to do any of that because my body knows how to just deliver in a really compressed amount of time. And I was like, oh, great. I recorded 2 TikToks. I can post them later. Now I can just do whatever else I want to do with my day, like going to a running class or recording a podcast. And it's fine.
No, that is amazing. And the one thing I like, just coming from the
Yeah.
comedian world as a stand-up, I understand that whole thing because I've seen so many stand-up comedians. They don't understand that the process doesn't change, like you were saying with musical theater, right? Like it's write a joke, it's learning how to write a joke,
Yep.
perform it in an audience, and then like kind of polishing it. And all
Yes.
it does, the lot older you are, I mean, the better, more experienced you get and more successful you get, is just you get to do bigger crowds, but the
Right.
process stays the same. So if you don't like that process, it's okay to leave if it's really causing you suffering, because why suffer
Why?
unnecessarily? And
Why?
all that experience you get, like you're saying. So I've seen a lot of guys who just aren't built for stand up, but they go into social media, they go into YouTube, they go into
Yep.
podcasting or something else, and they start developing a lot of success there,
Yeah.
and they're using stand up skills, but they just,
It's
yeah.
I will say, so I love stand up.
Mm.
I love stand up. I did a stand up class earlier this year. And it was one of the most rewarding classes I've ever taken.
Mm.
And I really did love the process. The community and I did not get along super, super well. For a number of reasons. And it was also the height of the pandemic, and it was not the most optimal conditions. But I love the
Mm.
process. And there really is something that honestly I think that everybody, regardless of your line of work, can take from learning how to prepare a piece of material, even if it's just like a 3-minute bit, right?
Hmm.
And even if it's not even that great or word perfect or the rhythm is off, whatever, that's like stand-up comedian skills. But understanding how to go, I have a thought, and then turning that thought into a premise and being able to go, oh, what worldview does this thought fit into? And oh, how can I map this onto an already existing scenario? I had so one of my bits was I was talking about like wokeness and talking to your parents, and I am adopted, so I have white parents,
Okay.
right? And they're boomer white parents.
Ha 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 ha. Ha.
And we have a lot of conversations and they're very open-minded. And I was like, oh, that's funny. I can create a setup that seems like it's hard. I say it is so hard to talk to my parents about social issues because they're so committed to understanding my point of view.
Mm.
And then I go into a whole thing of like, all I want to do is have a large emotional reaction and fire off a sassy tweet. But no, I have to defend my ideas with logic.
Ha 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 ha.
Right? It's not the most sophisticated joke. Many other people have made this joke. But the process of formulating that joke was so informative because it's like, okay, my worldview does not exist in a vacuum.
Mm.
Right? I saw a great little mindfulness video that I'm going to start using. And it's, if you're feeling stressed and overwhelmed, just look up at the ceiling.
Okay.
Okay. You look up at the ceiling, look up at the sky, look up at the stars, whatever it is. And just focus on the point above your head. And then understand that you are the only person looking at that spot from that angle right now.
Hmm. That's
And
interesting.
It's right. And it really helps me marry this idea of I have a singular worldview. I have a lens through which I see the world by virtue of my experiences. And so does everyone else around me. And this magical thing that we call life is all of us trying to align and collaborate and look at the same point from different angles and coming together.
Mm. No, I love that. That's actually a really good exercise. I should try
Right?
that out a little
Right.
bit. Yeah.
I saw that last night and it happened. I was like, I'm kind of stressed. Video comes up. All right, fine, universe.
Ha 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 ha.
You win.
Yeah.
I stared at the ceiling for 5 minutes and it was great. And I got a great night's sleep.
That was really nice. All right, let's I do want to talk about because like I think
Yeah.
I remember listening to one of your podcasts and you were talking about like masculine and feminine energies, and you explained this so well. And this is something that's in the last couple of years, and honestly, since I started this podcast, like
Yeah.
I started this podcast, I went on a big ayahuasca retreat, and it really put me in touch with honestly, in my world, it was my masculine energies that weren't really expressing that well because and then I needed to kind of like get that going. And so like, yeah, it was like, it became such a big thing. And then like in the last couple of years and even on this podcast, I'd like to talk about these masculine, feminine energies.
It's so, I feel it is so misunderstood. And the way that I talk about it on podcast in life, here's how I distinguish between masculine and feminine energy, or sun energy and moon energy, yang energy, yin energy. It's all different words for the same idea. So, but I'm going to for the purposes of the conversation, I'm going to shorthand it as masculine, feminine.
Okay.
Disclaimer. The job of masculine energy is to create space. So meaning, if you and your tribe come up to some woods and you're trying to settle down, right, and build a whatever, well, you have to clear away the foliage. Like you have to chop down trees. You have to create space to build shelters, right? So that's masculine energy's job, is to create the space or to weed the garden, to pull the weeds up. The job of feminine energy is to hold that space so that life can grow in the space that you have created.
I love that.
So where you get messed up is if you have only masculine energy, then you're just going to leave a lot of debris in your wake, right? You're like, I am conquering the things and chopping down the trees and creating all of this space, but you're not actually doing anything with it. You're just destroying things,
Mm-hmm.
right? But on the flip side, if you have an abundance of feminine energy, it can be really hard to grow, right? If you're like, I have my little garden and I can keep the wolves away, but you start to want to do more things. Oh, but there's weeds coming up in the garden. I don't know how to get rid of the weeds. You need the masculine energy to like get in there and just like weed the garden
Mm.
quickly and efficiently. And you're like, okay, great. We have the space cleared. Now we can plant more things. Now I can water the things that I care about. And ultimately, if you're trying to grow as a person, as a tribe, as a whatever, and you have your garden, you're like, okay, the feminine energy is going to protect what we already have, right? And then the masculine energy is going to clear more space, but it's fine. The tribe is still fine because we still have the shelter of what the feminine energy is holding. And then organically over time, everything grows.
Mm. I love that. Honestly, that is such a that's a great analogy. And like this is something I've just been so interested in the last few years. Because I think for me personally,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
like in my mid 20s and stuff, I got into yoga, I got into meditation, and I think
Mm-hmm.
I really helped out my feminine energy, like just being able
Totally.
to stay, be calm, be able to hold space, like you're saying, and like
Yeah.
that really helped out. And even creatively, I started like flourishing as well, where I started like being able to like learn how to write my jokes and become a better comedian. So I was really good at that.
Yeah.
But like you were saying, I love how you were saying like that masculine energy needs to be able to create more space, to be able to grow more, to be able to explore, to like that. That's what was missing for me. And I remember
Yeah.
when I went on that ayahuasca retreat, that was kind of getting hammered into me. Like you need this like this energy of being assertive and going after what you want,
Yes.
and like it requires that pushing through. You're pushing through barriers, pushing through fears, and that's the one thing that ayahuasca really showed me and allowed me to express my masculine energy a lot more.
That's
And now
fantastic.
I'm like trying to like play with both of them, where I'm like, okay, I can have a little bit of both because I create more space with my masculine, and then like I can, like you said, I can like nurture that space and like have a new place where I can creatively have fun with, right?
Yes, yes, and you need both. And this is where I feel the discourse, understandably, in the last couple of years, has gone a little off the rails, in my opinion, because I feel like the media narrative these days is so interested in understanding the ways in which masculine energy can be destructive and hurt
Mm-hmm.
other people, and the incentives in our culture to bully people. Like we live in a culture that rewards bullying in a lot of ways, and it rewards selfishness and taking what you want. And I think it's absolutely crucial that we understand that those incentives are in play.
Mm.
But I worry that we're sending the message and not being clear enough about the problem is that we're using masculine energy to hurt people,
Exactly. Yeah.
and that we're using power and status and resources to keep other people oppressed, whether it's women or minorities or people with disabilities or whatever it may be. That's the problem. It's the hurting people, it's the punching down people. That's the problem. It is not the it is not the flavor of the energy.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the issue. And I do think that as men, we have a responsibility to understand the ways in which men hurt people, and men are often not punished for hurting people. That's a thing we need to understand.
Yeah.
But we have to understand that that's not because they're men, and it's not because, well, masculine energy is obviously just terrible. We have to,
Exactly.
right? We have to find ways in our own lives to use it for good
Mm-hmm.
and to really embody. So I talked about the running class that I just came from. There's a guy, his name is Andrew Schuth. I think that's how you pronounce his last name. Crushed by Andrew. You can find him on Instagram. He's terrific. His classes are so hardcore. I can usually do half of them. Like, these classes they're like cardio and fitness, and he does spin classes. His Instagram handle is crushed by Andrew.
Ha 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 ha.
Okay. These classes do not mess around. And I grow so much every time I go because there are parameters on how, you can have this really intense masculine energy of like push through the barriers, sprint, go. You're going to do a 1 minute run, and then you're going up another, 0.5 miles per hour, and you're going to run for another minute, and then you get to jog, whatever, right? And so because it's in the confines of this class, we're like, let's go. There's no one can get hurt in this, right? So you can push yourself, you can have all that masculine energy. It's directed, it's specific, it's confined. And then when the class is over, he's like, great job, you guys. Get some coconut water, make sure you refuel, make sure you stretch, have a wonderful day, take care of yourself, take care of your body, and I'll see you next week.
Mm-hmm. And that's like more of a feminine energy of like
Exactly.
rest,
Rest,
nurture.
recover, nurture. And quite honestly, it's not even in the sense of like, well, I worked hard, so I earned the feminine, nurturing. It's, listen, I take class with him 3 or 4 times a week, depending on my schedule. Today was running. I have a spin class with him tomorrow. If I don't recover today and really take that time to take care of myself, to nourish myself, to give myself the space to just be, I'm not going to be able to get the most out of the class tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still going to be tired. And that doesn't serve anybody.
Exactly. And I love that. And I wish more people can get that, because I do agree with you that demonization of just that kind of energy is not useful. And
No.
it doesn't actually work, because like you just end up having people, I feel like,
Yeah.
and I'll give you an example. Like
Please. Yeah, talk to me.
in comedy, in our comedy scenes, now I see like this masculine and feminine energy getting separated, and I see it like now you get rooms where some comedy rooms are just very like feminine energy, where it's like, oh, everything's safe, everything, like this is our safe place and stuff. But in those rooms, I don't see any growth. Like people don't grow because there's no taking chances. There's no, you know what I'm talking about? And then in the masculine rooms, like there's like it's so masculine energy, it becomes these edge lords, and it becomes very cruel. Like you see a lot of that, because how you were saying like the masculine energy can destroy. So you see these kind of rooms where it's like becoming like a lot of comedians are just becoming like very cruel. And it just like in that situation, you're just like, God damn, like I don't like either of these. And it's like you wanna get both of those energies in you, because you need both.
I'm like legit getting choked up because you articulated my experience in the stand-up world so well. Because the class that I was in was very much on the feminine energy side. Because I was like, listen, I have a lot of experience with improv and sketch writing, and just like, and honestly, just like as a musician and like singing pop songs, I understand the structure of a pop song is fundamentally the same as the structure of a 3-minute sketch, which in a lot of ways is similar to the fundamentals of a 2 to 3 minute comedy bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like premise, defy expectations, explore the premise, rehammer the, like it's punchline at the end, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, okay, I got all these things, but you know what? I don't want this edgelord experience. I don't want my first experience with this thing that I might love to be cruel or punching down or negative or cynical. Like, I want to use the art form of stand-up comedy as a vessel for my joy.
Mm-hmm.
That is the only thing I'm interested in ever, is what is the best vessel for my joy right now. So I went with this other class, and I was effectively the only straight white male in the group.
All right.
It was like 8 or 9 people. I think it was it was 5 women, 1 queer white man, and 3 non-white straight men.
Okay.
Here's the problem, is that I didn't get into stand-up to get clapped. I did not get into stand-up because I wanted people to agree with me.
Mm-hmm.
But the incentives in that kind of very woke, very feminine energy environment, when the emphasis is on safety, can turn into this, like, let me say something that I'm pretty sure my peers are going to agree with. Right? If you're choosing between, I could have this perspective on a joke or I could have that perspective on a joke, the incentives are often to be like, you know what, let me make sure that if the other people agree with me and I can make it funny, that's the route that I'm going to go all the time. But here's the problem. If you're going to express your singular worldview, your genuine, most authentic, most individual, unique perspective, by definition, other people are probably going to disagree to some extent or another.
Mm-hmm.
Because my experience, like, listen, we are both non-white men.
Mm-hmm.
But our experience as non-white men in Western culture are totally different. So I'm going to talk about things in a way that, that might not be as PC, or might be too PC, or might whatever. And also I felt like I had to talk about race a lot. And I had to talk about the ways in which I have been marginalized because of my race. And I just didn't want to.
You didn't want that. You didn't want the clapter. Like, that's like people like just cheering for you because of.
I don't want the clapter.
Yeah,
I don't, But again, honestly, going back to this idea of, like, I want everything that I do to be a vessel for my joy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't find joy in exploring the ways in which my life is hard for reasons outside of my control. I don't care.
All right.
I don't have any interest in investing my energy in that, when instead I could be investing my energy into getting better, into finding something else, into moving forward in life.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I felt like the incentives in that very safe, woke environment, it was like, well, if you want the laughs, if you want to get that audience response, the best thing to talk about is, like, man, it's really tough to be brown in America these days.
I hate that, dude. That's exactly what I see in like a lot of these kind of rooms, and I don't like it either. Like, I've seen it with like a lot of like getting ahead in the scene, but I hate that they look at brown people or like whatever race or whatever you are, and they're just like, tell me how you're a victim and we'll elevate that story. And it's like, hey, we have other stories too. Like, we we're still people with 1,000 different
Yes.
identities, with 1,000 different whatever it is.
Yeah.
Like, let us tell all those other stories. But it seems like they just want to elevate. And
Right.
like me creatively,
Yeah.
what made me grow the most
Yeah.
was talking about my spirituality on stage. And that spirituality doesn't have anything to do with my religion, with my
I
victimhood or
love it.
anything. That's what made me grow the most. And it was very hard for me to do that. And
Yeah.
that was mostly just because I've never seen other comedians talk about it. So that was the reason.
Right.
Talking about my race was kind of easy. And
Mm-hmm.
that's how I learned to be a comedian.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I was a brown guy, grew up in a small town, Muslim dude, like all of these things. It was easy to kind of find.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same with sex. Like, it's easy to kind of find like the funny in that, and that's how I
Yeah.
learned to be a comedian. And I have zero regrets about that.
Totally.
But when I needed to grow, I needed to
Right.
talk about something different, and that's kind of the thing. And I that's the one thing that annoys me. It's like, as a brown comedian, sometimes it's like I feel like they want me to tell the
Yep.
victimhood story, and that's how
Yeah.
I'll elevate my career.
Yeah.
And I fucking hate
Right.
that.
Like I don't know. I won't. I'm very lucky in the sense that because my parents are white and because I have no relatives who look like me. Not one. Heritage wise, in terms of like my parents and whatnot, I'm Sicilian and Scottish and Dutch and English and Irish, and I'm all of those things. And so it's a little easier for me to be like, if somebody wants me to like, well, what's it like being brown in America and like how that's hard? I'm like, that's not my story. It just there's nothing I can really say about it because I never grew up like, I guess cosmetically I'm brown, but culturally I don't have that story of like first generation immigrant, immigrant parents, first generation American. At home, I eat samosas, but at school, I eat Lunchables. How do I reconcile the two? And
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
like, luckily that's not my story. So it's easy for me to pivot away from that.
Mm,
Um, but there are lots of times where I do feel like my humor is more, I don't know that I want to say geared towards, but like if it's the same jokes that just any white dude would tell. They're
mhm,
not there's not a difference. Like any of my jokes that I have written, with the exception of the very, very specific, my parents are adopted and they're very understanding. With the
mhm,
exception of that one joke, any joke that I wrote could be told by a suburban white dude.
mm,
And that in and of itself, I have subjectively found in the more woke environments, that kind of clangs. They're not, it's like, wait a minute, is this a white dude joke? Is
like,
this,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
wait, why isn't, and also because I am adopted and my parents only speak English, I don't, I, I don't even have an accent. Like
Mhm.
it's not like I'm telling a joke about COVID or something.
Ha 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 ha
And but
ha.
if I'm talking about it like this, like, oh well, okay, well, he's obviously Indian,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right? It's just no, I mean, I wear t-shirts and backwards hats and chunky jewelry because I grew up in Albuquerque. Like, I don't know what you want from me.
Albuquerque, yeah.
I grew up in Albuquerque.
Yeah, that does sound actually like a very, I don't even know where Albuquerque is. Where
No,
is
but
that?
it just sounds like it's in New Mexico.
It's in New Mexico. Okay. I just know it from The Simpsons when
Yep.
Albuquerque when
Yes.
the baseball team was going to move
Yo,
there.
as a
The
side note,
Isotopes.
yes, dude. No, that's our baseball team.
It's called the Isotopes?
Yes,
Oh.
we have a minor league team. We used to be called the Albuquerque Dukes, and then they went through a rebranding. They got sold to a different team, and when they were going through suggestions like what should we name our baseball team, they were flooded with we should be the Albuquerque Isotopes. and we have a national lab and a big science community, and that worked. And the Albuquerque Isotopes is a real baseball team.
That's amazing. I'll go have to check them out if I'm ever in Albuquerque.
If you're ever in Albuquerque, you got to do it.
All right. Yo, Raja, we've been like talking a ton on like there's
Yeah.
so much shit I didn't get to, but
It's all good. Yeah. What do you, let's,
all right. Well, like
round it
before
up. What do
we
you wanna
get
talk about?
going, there was
man.
two things I know you talk about personality types a ton. Like
Yes.
you know a lot about that, and
Yeah.
you know a lot about you try to live an intentional life, right?
Yes.
So
Very
like
much.
yeah, so I did want to jump on both of those. I don't
Let's
know
talk
which
about
one.
it.
Yeah, so what
Let's
do
talk
you
about the personality type one.
Okay, so like let my audience know about
Yeah.
like what these personality types are and why is it a good thing to kind of understand those personality types.
I love it. I love it. So the personality types, my expertise is in Myers-Briggs, which is the 4 letters like ENTJ and ISFP and all of the whatever.
Mhm.
And the very, very brief rundown is the EI is extrovert introvert.
Okay.
You have, and again, that's just sort of where your energy naturally wants to go,
Okay.
right? Or is your impulse to expend energy or conserve energy?
Okay.
That's all it is.
Okay.
The N versus S is.
And Dave, just to jump on that, do you
Yeah.
see any kind of masculinity, femininity there? Like
I don't.
extrovert? You don't? Okay.
Not at all.
Okay.
I think that, and that's actually weirdly kind of why I like it, is because to me, it feels inherently very gender neutral.
Okay.
Right. And we have plenty of archetypes of very outgoing men, right? You have the Kevin Harts and the Jamie Foxxes of the world and the Will Smiths, but you also have the strong silent type, and you have the Gary Coopers and the Marlboro Mans and the very right.
Yeah.
So these are, and again, same for women. You have the Oprahs of the world, and you also have, well, for women it's a little tougher just because of sexism in our culture, but there's plenty of archetypes of like the nerdy genius, like fairly introverted, brilliant, author woman, for instance, right?
Yeah.
So that in that respect, I don't actually, in all of the respects, thinking and feeling maybe a little bit, but for sexist reasons. But for the intuition and sensing, it's, are you more effortlessly attuned, right? The key word being effortless.
Okay.
Are you more effortlessly attuned to the actual sensory, literal details of something, or the connections between the sensory details?
Okay. Can you explain
so
that a
meaning,
bit?
yeah, totally. So like, are you more interested in the literal or the analogy?
Okay.
That's the easiest way to put it.
Okay.
Right. So I am an N. I have N in my stack, whatever. Because I'm an analogy machine. I've made 17 analogies in this podcast alone. Right.
Makes sense. All right. Okay.
Right. So I'm like, oh, this thing, I get it. This thing is like this other thing.
Yeah. Okay.
Right?
That sounds me too.
Right. I'm not as interested in seeing the things as being individual, whatever.
Right? I get what you're saying. Like, I guess a more engineering mind would be like, okay, this thing is this kind of thing, and
this widget is this widget does this widget, and this thing goes here, and this piston does that. Right. Okay. And then there's the T and the F. This one is where everybody gets screwed up. The T versus the F, the way that I think of it is, it's not about emotions as much as it's about it's not about like being emotional or not. It's, do you justify your emotions based on like reasons and logic and sort of the block banging? Or do you justify it based on values? Like, this is important, this matters. Rather than does the logic line up? Does this thing logically follow this other thing? But it has nothing to do with like, well, I'm an F because I'm so emotional. No, motherfucker, you're human. Everyone's emotional. welcome to being a human. Like, that's not, you don't get a cookie for being emotional. It's how do you funnel those how do you justify those emotions?
Okay.
Right. And then the last one, the P versus J, that one's where you get kind of screwed up, and I don't love the definitions, but basically it's, do you thrive more with structure or freedom? Given the two, given a choice, would you rather have more structure or more freedom?
Okay. And that actually, that's a great thing to kind of know about yourself, because I'm actually even trying to think about that, and I'm like, sometimes I'm like, nope, structure is really good for me, but other times I'm like, I became a comedian, like in my head I'm like for freedom, but
here's the
sometimes
thing.
too much of that freedom like screwed
me.
me.
One of the things that I love about stand-up comedy is because I get to create the joke. I get to create as much structure as I want. Right? So I am not, when I did this stand-up thing, I don't do crowd work. I'm not a crowd work guy. I want to write the tightest sketches and jokes that I possibly can. I want to know the rhythm. I want to know every single word. I want to be able to see the arc of the thing. So the key in all of this is understanding your default impulses, right? And being able to go, so like I go back and forth on the E and the I, because I'm pretty split with the extroversion introversion, but I'm solidly a pattern analogy dude. I'm solidly a logic, does this block bang together, right?
Okay.
Well, logically, if I want to book this part, then logically I have to get up at a certain time and go to the audition. More than, no, this audition really matters to me, and so therefore I'm going to do it. Right?
Yeah. Okay.
Right. And I like the structure, right? So I'm like ENTJ or INTJ. Here's the catch. My job, once I know this, is to be able to go, okay, I go into a new situation. This is my impulse. My impulse is to expend energy, to find analogies, to make the logic work, and to find the structure. Then I have to go, do all four of these serve me right now? And if it doesn't, if I'm like, ooh, you know what, this is not a logic situation. This is a conversation about values. This person is talking about something that really matters to them. You know what? T is not the right tool for this job. I need to tap into my F. So I think everybody has access to all 8 all the time.
Okay. So, and I guess that like you were saying, that's really good to kind of understand where you naturally just flow to.
Yes.
And then when the situation doesn't call for it, to be able to be like, let me go into the other side of it.
Listen, I love structure, but I've also learned. So like, for instance, for this podcast, just to pull back the green curtain for a second, I have learned how much structure I need to thrive, because I don't need all the structure. I don't need to know all the questions, but I do need to know, what time are we starting? About how long do you want to go for? Usually I ask if we're allowed to swear. I forgot to ask this time. Whatever. You sweared first, so I can, whatever.
Yeah.
But I've learned that, like, oh no, my impulse is to over control, and it doesn't get me the result I want. So let me find a couple of knobs that I know that I can set, that are really, really important to me, and then everything else, let it flow. And that's ultimately going to get the best result in everything that I do. But it's taken time to learn, like, these are my default impulses. These are the muscles that aren't as strong for me. And it really is me being able to go, okay, let me not put myself in situations where I have to be introverted, focus on sensory details with no analogies, be only based on values, and value freedom. Like, that would be really hard. It's a great thing to practice from time to time, but I don't want that to be my job.
Okay.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm like, okay, I know that I have these muscles. I can access them when I need them. But if I feel like there's an environment or a scenario that's really requiring a lot of a muscle that just doesn't flow as easily, maybe it's not the right thing. Like YouTube is not the right thing for me because it requires me to be so detail oriented and the process is a very inwardly turned process.
Mm.
And I can do that from time to time, but it's not my favorite. And it's not something I can build a career on. But TikTok rewards me for punches of energy. It rewards me for making analogies. It rewards me for thinking things through and like giving the clear logic of something and putting it all in a nice 14.6-second package.
Ha, 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 ha.
So that rewards me for things that flow. And I'm like, oh, this is a thing really worth investing in. But it doesn't mean that if a piece of chaos comes up, like my first video that did really well got hit with a community guidelines violation. I thought I was following the rules. Apparently I wasn't. I don't know. And so then I had to learn to be like, well, I'll have another hit. Whatever. Let me keep making videos. It's fine. And
Nice.
that's where my inner Jay wanted to be like, no, learn the rules better. No, there's no rules to learn. You just had it happened. We all get hit with community. Like if you're creating content on any platform, you're gonna get demonetized. You're gonna have a community guidelines violation. That's just a thing that's going to happen to you. And so it happens, and then you move on. And it's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, man. All right. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for explaining that to my audience. I think I'm gonna have to take that test just.
I think you'd like it. And then again, understand it as this, even if it's just like, this is where I'm at today. Right? I think that's a really useful way to look at it. Be like, ooh, I have got a lot of ENT. I got a lot of extroversion today. Okay, good to be aware of. Let me be mindful of whether or not that's serving me as I go throughout my day.
That's a great way to look at it. No, I love that. And like you were saying, like that's very intentional, like understanding like this is it helps where you want to put your energy.
Exactly.
All right, Raja, this was freaking awesome. I got one more question. It's the name of the podcast. So Raja, God yay or nay?
Hardcore, unambiguous yay.
Yay, okay. Nice. Is this something that is this something from family, or is it more of like something you developed yourself?
You know, my family is so open-minded and wonderful and spiritual in ways that I don't even know that they fully recognize. Like they really are such an embodiment of how to move through the world and how to treat people and how to be kind and considerate and authentic. And they are godly by any reasonable metric.
That's awesome.
But as far as my personal faith, I definitely veer more occulty. I'm very into ritual. I'm very into, and even with the major religions, the stuff that I love about it are the more ritualized pagan aspects of it. That's why I love Catholicism. I think Catholicism is so dope because for whatever like cell memory reason, whenever go to a Catholic mass and it's the smells and bells, it's the drinking the blood and eating and and there's like a torture device like in the middle of the cathedral. I'm like, oh, this takes me back. Like this, it really does connect with something like really, really primal. I am not interested in the ways in which humans pervert religious teachings to further their own material goals, right? And how they use teachings and scriptures and whatnot to oppress other people and to harm other people. That gets an A from me, dog.
Ha 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 ha.
But no, but at its core, like I think here's what I'll end on. There's a guy, his name is Mike Flanagan. He did Haunting of Hill House, Midnight Mass. His genre is what I have heard called horror therapy. And I love his work. His work is incredible. And my big takeaway from his work, and it's really how I choose to move through the world, is like this. The world is as magical and as wonderful as we choose to believe that it is. And even though loss and grief are ongoing processes, our job on this planet is to find joy in our everyday lives.
Mm-hmm. Hey, can't complain about that philosophy, eh?
Mm-hmm.
All right, Raja, thanks so much. This was amazing. Please let my audience know where they can get a hold of you. Tell them about your TikTok, podcast,
Totally, yeah.
anything else.
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram, TikTok, at the Jolly Raja.
I like that name.
The Jolly Raja. I'd love to see you guys on there.
Awesome. Yo, thanks a ton, Raja. And yeah, let's do it again. I think we have so much more to talk about.
We have so much more to talk about. Thanks for the great conversation.